She laughed in his face when the most feared man in Seoul asked her to be his girlfriend. 3 weeks later, that laugh was the only thing standing between her and a war she never asked to be part of. Before we drove in, subscribe, share, and likes. Now. Christy Adeyemi didn't scare easily. Not after growing up in Chicago's South Side. Not after moving to Seoul alone with 2 suitcases and a scholarship that barely covered rent. She worked nights at a jazz bar in Itaewon, pouring drinks for businessmen who never looked her in the eye twice, until the night one did. Si-woo Kang walked into rooms the way storms walked into cities. Quiet first, then everything changed. Neck tattoos hidden under a black suit collar, a reputation that made grown men flinch when his name came up in conversation. He ran half the ports on the western coast, and the other half feared him enough to stay out of his way. He hadn't planned on noticing her, but Christy didn't flinch when his men cleared the bar for him. She didn't lower her eyes. She slid his drink across the counter and said, "That's 18,001. Doesn't matter who you are." Nobody had spoken to him like that in 6 years. He started coming back. Every Thursday, same booth, same silence, same drink he barely touched, just to watch the one person in Seoul who wasn't afraid of him. Christy thought he was just another rich man playing games. She'd seen enough of those to know how the story ended. She had no idea Si-woo Kang didn't play games. She had no idea that in 3 weeks he'd be on his knees in that same bar, asking her to marry him in front of everyone, and she had no idea what would happen the night after she said no. 3 weeks later, the bar was fuller than usual, because Si-woo had emptied it. Every table but hers cleared. He walked in wearing a black suit like it was armor, and for the first time, Christy saw something underneath the storm. Nerves. He didn't sit in his booth. He crossed the room, got down on one knee in front of the whole staff, and pulled out a small velvet box. "Christy," he said, "be my girlfriend." Silence. Then Christy laughed. Sharp, disbelieving, the kind of laugh that comes out before you can stop it. "You're joking." "I don't joke." Si-woo. She said his name like a warning. "You don't know me. You know a girl who pours your drinks." His jaw tightened. For a man used to being obeyed, rejection was a language he'd never learned. He closed the box slowly, stood, and said the only thing that made her stomach drop. "You'll change your mind. Everyone does." It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like grief. He left without another word, and the bar exhaled like it had been holding its breath the entire time. Christy told herself it didn't matter. Told herself she'd made the right call. You don't fall for men whose hands don't shake when they say dangerous things calmly. But that night, walking home alone, a black car slowed beside her for 3 full blocks before disappearing into the dark. She didn't know if it was protection or a warning. Christy didn't see Si-woo for 11 days. She told herself she was relieved. She picked up extra shifts, avoided Thursdays, deleted the number he'd left folded under her tip jar without ever calling it. But Seoul had a way of talking. Whispers followed her now. Bar regulars going quiet when she walked by. A new bouncer stationed outside who never introduced himself. Her manager, Mr. Park, pulled her aside one night, sweating. "Do you know who you rejected?" "A customer." "Kang Si-woo doesn't get rejected, Christy. People don't say no to him and just continue their lives." She wanted to laugh it off again, but something in Mr. Park's face stopped her. Real fear. The kind that doesn't perform for an audience. 2 nights later, a rival gang member cornered her in the alley behind the bar. Not to hurt her, but to deliver a message with his eyes more than his words. "Tell your Mafia boss his enemies know about you now." Her Mafia boss. Not her admirer, not her customer. Hers. She didn't sleep that night. She kept replaying his voice. "You'll change your mind. Everyone does," and realized it hadn't been arrogance. It had been him already knowing what saying yes to her would cost him, and what saying no would cost her. She'd laughed at a man trying to protect her by staying away. The attack came on a Tuesday. 2 men grabbed Christy off the street 3 blocks from the bar. Not random, not clumsy, professional. She fought, screamed, got one good hit into a jaw before a black car screeched to a stop, and Si-Woo's men spilled out like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Si-Woo himself arrived 4 minutes later, and Christy had never seen a man look that calm while being that dangerous. He didn't raise his voice. He asked one question: which family? And when he got his answer, something in his eyes went cold enough to frost the whole street. "You're staying at my house," he told her afterward, not a request. "I don't need. You were taken because of me. You're staying at my house." She wanted to argue. She had nothing left to argue with. The mansion was colder than she expected. Beautiful, precise, empty, in a way that had nothing to do with square footage. Si-Woo gave her the east wing, posted 3 guards outside her door, and didn't come near her for 2 full days. On the 3rd night, she found him in the kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at nothing, a glass of untouched whiskey in front of him. "Why didn't you tell me it was dangerous to know you?" she asked quietly. He looked up, exhausted in a way power never shows in daylight. "Because I was hoping you'd stay anyway." That night, sitting across from him in the dark kitchen, Christy finally asked the question everyone in Seoul was too afraid to ask. "How does someone become you?" Si-Woo was quiet for a long time. Then he told her about his mother, a seamstress in Busan who died owing money to men who didn't forgive debts, only collected them in blood or obedience. He was 14. He remembered the sound of her crying through a locked door, remembered promising himself he'd become someone nobody could ever threaten again. "I built an empire so no one I love would ever be powerless like she was," he said. "I just didn't plan on loving anyone." Christy sat with that for a long moment before offering her own truth. "I was engaged once, back in Chicago." Her voice thinned. "He looked good on paper, steady job, charming. My mother adored him. Then I found out he was engaged to someone else the entire time. I was the secret. I laughed at you that night because the last man who begged for my heart was lying the whole time he held it." Si-Woo's expression didn't soften with pity. It sharpened with understanding. "I'm not him." "I know," Christy whispered. "That's what scares me." For the first time since she'd met him, the silence between them didn't feel dangerous. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. The days that followed felt stolen, unreal, like borrowed time neither of them fully trusted. Si-Woo taught her to shoot, badly, laughing for the first time she'd ever heard when she nearly hit a garden statue instead of the target. She taught him to cook jollof rice, and he burned it twice before admitting defeat and ordering takeout, sitting on the kitchen floor with her instead of at the enormous dining table built for a family he'd never had. He started calling her Christy instead of Miss Adeyemi. She started calling him C instead of Mr. Kang. One evening, watching the sunset from the mansion's private garden, she asked him plainly, "If I hadn't laughed that night, what would you have done?" "Protected you quietly, never told you why." He turned to face her. "I'm glad you laughed. It meant I had to earn it instead." She reached for his hand, the first time she'd touched him without fear or urgency behind it, and he held it like it was something breakable. If anyone's watching this and has ever fallen for someone you swore you'd never trust, drop it below. I want to know I'm not the only one. That night was the closest thing to peace either of them had felt in years. It didn't last. The call came at dawn. One of Si-Woo's men, a mole, planted inside his organization for over a year, had leaked Christy's location to the rival family days before the alley attack. The mole's name was Detective Han, the same officer Christy had once given free drinks to, the same man who'd smiled at her like a friend. Si-Woo's fury wasn't loud. It was worse. Silent, methodical, the version of him she'd only heard about in whispers. He locked himself with his men for 6 hours. When he emerged, his knuckles were split and his eyes were somewhere else entirely. "He's dealt with," was all he said. Dealt with how? He didn't answer, and his silence answered for him. Christy felt something cold settle in her chest. "I can't be with someone who solves problems like that. He would have sold you again, to finish what the first attack started. That doesn't make it okay. It's the only world I have to protect you in." His voice broke. Actually broke, for the first time. You think I wanted this life? You think I wanted to be someone you'd be afraid of? I'm not afraid of you, her voice shook. I'm afraid of what loving you will turn me into. She walked out that night. Siwoo let her. Neither of them said the words either was thinking, that this might be the last time they saw each other. Christy spent 4 days in a cheap motel across the city, staring at a ceiling stain shaped like nothing, replaying every version of the argument where she'd said something different. She missed him. She hated that she missed him. On the 5th night, Mr. Park called her, panicked. Christy, turn on the news. Siwoo had been ambushed. The rival family, retaliating for Detective Han, had hit his convoy 2 blocks from the mansion. He was alive, barely, in a private hospital wing under an assumed name, and the only person he'd asked for wasn't his lawyer, his second-in-command, or his family. It was her. Christy stood frozen in that motel room, every rational fear she'd built screaming at her to stay away. But underneath the fear was something louder, the memory of him kneeling on a marble floor once, metaphorically, for her. Over and over, in every quiet way he knew how to love someone who'd been lied to before. She thought about her ex, about the lie that made her build walls in the first place. Siwoo had never once lied to her. Not about the danger, not about the cost, not about himself. She grabbed her coat and ran. If you were her, would you have gone back? Comment below. I need to know where you land on this. The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and fear. Christy found his room, breathless, and stopped in the doorway. Siwoo was pale, bandaged across the ribs, but his eyes opened the moment she stepped in, like some part of him had sensed her before he saw her. You came, he rasped. You almost died. I've almost died 100 times. I've never had someone to come back for. He tried to sit up, wincing. I meant what I said in the bar that night. I don't joke. Christy crossed the room and took his hand, the same hand she'd held in the garden, now bandaged and trembling. Ask me again, she whispered. Christy, his voice cracked with something rawer than fear. Marry me. Yes, she laughed. But this time it wasn't disbelief. It was relief, joy, everything she'd been too afraid to feel until now. Yes, Siwoo. He smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd met him. But as the nurses filed in and the machines beeped steady around them, Christy caught something in the hallway mirror behind Siwoo's bed. A figure in a dark coat, watching through the small window in the door. Gone the second she blinked. Detective Han had a partner, one nobody had found yet. Somewhere in Seoul, someone else already knew Siwoo Kang was still alive, and they weren't happy about it.